Charlie Sykes, you and I have had a lot of these conversations about the damage he can do in this transition to what Americans do if they go about their lives and think that masks don't really help, if they go about their holidays and say, I'm having a gathering, I really miss my loved ones. But we haven't talked quite as much about everything that's in the news this week. The news last night, the revelation that there's a DOJ investigation into a possible bribery scheme around pardons. Now, as Andrew Weissman said, we should have predicted that it would end that way. But what do you make of sort of this final last gasping, sordid chapter of Trump's presidency?
Well, I want to agree with Jason. This is actually the most dangerous 60 days of the Trump presidency, because I think we can probably spare ourselves some heartburn if we recognize, look, there are no norms that he is not willing to violate. There's no standard of decency that he's not willing to shred. And unfortunately, he has put a target on Christopher Wray's back right now. Look, we have not even seen how low he's going to go on the pardon palooza. We don't know what the extent of the corruption is going to be. But what we do know is the president of the United States right now in real time is trying to overturn a legitimate Democratic election. If somebody would have suggested a few years ago, Nicolle, that we would be seeing a president of the United States that is actively trying to disenfranchise millions of voters to overturn an election and have himself declared the winner, people would have thought, oh, that's Trump derangement syndrome. But that's literally what's going on right now. And again, every single day, we're seeing that this is a man untrammeled, but we knew this. I mean, he is who he is. Who he's always been, but a man untrammeled by any sense of ethics or respect for history. I mean, there was a little while ago we were debating, is he going to show up at the inauguration? Well, now it looks like not only is he not going to show up at the inauguration, he may stage his own counter-inauguration. And he may make that a litmus test for the Republican Party whether they're going to show up. So, no, I think we got to keep our eyes very much focused on this president, because just when we think he's done all the damage he can do, there's another 2 months to go.
You know, Charlie, I want to press you on this idea of just how sad and pathetic that is. You can just see him, screaming at the poor, sorry advance guy, because he'll no longer have access to WACA, which is White House communications folks who set things up in presidential caliber. So you can see him screaming at whoever the next Brad Pascal turned out to be, or whoever's still left from his 5-week jihad against American democracy. But the idea that pathetic display could have any sway over elected Republicans is such a sad indictment of elected Republicans.
You know, it is. But let me also point out what a sad indictment it is of American democracy right now. That you have the vast majority of Republican voters who are willing to believe many of the things that the president is saying, who doubt the legitimacy of this election. And, I know that there are people out there who are saying, well, the institutions have been resilient. We've gotten through it. He's taken his shot. But I kind of wonder whether or not our constitutional republic is like this giant battleship that's been hit by a torpedo under the waterline, and whether we don't know how much water we're taking in right now. Because if we have a country where 47% of Americans don't believe that our democracy works or don't believe that the elected president of the United States is legitimate, then we really have turned the page in the democratic history of this country. That is real damage, long-term damage. And what we've seen is that Donald Trump is prepared to inflict that damage and continue to. If I make one more point, you had this very emotional, you covered this yesterday, this very emotional plea from the elections official in Georgia. Mr. President, watch the language you're using. People are going to die. People are going to be shot. This is crucial. How does the president respond to that? By doubling down on his rhetoric, by pushing it even further, by pitting the deranged versus the demented versus the conspiracy theorist. And so, Donald Trump is not done damaging this country by a long time, and he won't be for a long time, because if he announces he's running in 2024, the Republican Party, which has been held hostage for the last 4 years, will be held hostage for another 4 years, and they will be married to Donald Trump's mendacity and his lies.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.